Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc Colcer podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Colcer Podcast. How's your day going, man?
Doing great, brother. Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I'm glad to finally make this happen with you because I've wondered who Carlo is for the longest time. Because I don't feel like, other than like a few phone calls we've had in the last like week or so, we've never really connected before this, right?
Yeah, we haven't. And I've been following you for almost a year now, so I'm excited to be here and nice for us to finally meet.
Yeah, I'm glad we could connect. So, okay, so I want to explain kind of the format of what we're doing here today. And so for everybody who's watching this, a lot of them know that you guys, Catalina Whales, has been on my podcast before, right? There's obviously been a ton that has happened since, because that was back last like May, I believe, something like that. And so a lot has happened in the world since then. A lot's happened in the NFT space, a lot's happened in crypto, everything like that. And so what I want to talk about today is kind of the good, bad, and the ugly of everything that's occurred with Catalina Whales in the last year, and then also where are things going in the future, right? So depending on how long this conversation goes, it might be 2 episodes, it might be 1 episode. By the time this comes out, you guys will know. If you see part 1 up there, then this is a 2-parter. If not, it's just 1 episode. But we really wanted to kind of get into the like nitty gritty of what's been going on. Because one of my big gripes with the NFT space is it feels like oftentimes people want people to fail, right? And for me, the way I look at it is we really need people to learn from their experience and learn and grow from that and adapt and keep moving forward, right? But one of the things that we don't often do is we don't give people the room to do that, right? And so instead, we act like projects have to be perfect, founders have to be perfect, teams have to be perfect, when in reality, that's usually very far from the truth, right? And so that's why I wanted to really have this conversation, is go over like, what have you guys done right? What have you guys done wrong? Have a really open and honest conversation about it, and then talk about how you guys are taking what you've learned and how that's going to be affecting you guys moving forward, right? Awesome. So before we get started, for people who don't know who you are, can you give a brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, my name's Carlo Fox, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of WAGMI Beach and the Catalina Whales.
There we go. We go. So what was your background before getting into NFTs?
Yeah, so for about the last 15 plus years, I've worked in music and entertainment, most of that time as a music manager. I founded a music management firm called Indie Pop, where we represent artists, songwriters, producers, and yeah, I've been doing that since 2008, and that kind of progressed into another business which I founded with the same team and some other partners, which is a music distribution and content company and called Independent Co. So I was doing that before I got into Web3 and founded WAGMI Beach, and through that process, I started to find opportunities kind of tangential to entertainment to get involved in crypto and Web3. So I've been kind of generally interested and following and making whether it's early stage investments or retail investments in crypto since like late 16, 17, and then maybe about 2.5 years ago, or a little bit more than 2 years ago, I teamed up with some friends from the entertainment space, some guys with kind of similar backgrounds to myself. They've been working in music and entertainment. They had been following crypto for a while and were interested in Web3. And we started a principal-backed fund called Wave 7. The idea behind Wave 7 is we kind of replaced the word artist with founder, And we thought, okay, what really we've done, like all of our career as artist managers and working in artist development, is we've partnered with someone who we see talent in, and we've built businesses around them, and we've built resources around them to turn them into successful, sustainable businesses, right? So we talk to them, and we kind of identify what they're looking to accomplish, and then we figure out how do we use our resources, our skills, our knowledge base to turn that into a business, right? And we were seeing all these really talented young founders in Web3 that were developing things, and we were like, I wonder, and we were also seeing that a lot of times the cap tables in crypto were really one-sided. It was a lot of people with similar skill sets, right? They might come from finance, they might have good relationships with the crypto exchanges. They might be heavy on the technical side and be really great for helping you scale an engineering team. But there was a lot of gaps, and especially as we were seeing kind of there being an interest in building products in Web3 that were attracting that were built to attract more of a non-crypto native audience, right? We felt that it was that our kind of unique skill set being sort of at the intersection of Web3 and entertainment could add a lot of value, right? So for instance, if a founder is trying to figure out how to work with entertainment companies, if they're trying to figure out how to license content, they want to work with influencers, they want to kind of do any of these type of things that were sort of tangential to our world in entertainment, we can be helpful. So for that reason, we were able to get in a lot of competitive rounds as angel investors, and also a lot of times those angel investments led to a kind of advisory opportunities. And essentially what we were doing is we were okay, let's contribute some money and let's contribute some resources to try and making these some of these businesses successful. And so essentially doing the Wave 7 thing led us to making a seed investment in a AMM on Solana. And we had been kind of buying and selling ETH NFTs and degenning out and doing our thing. And then we went on this AMM, and we were like, wow, this is so easy and cheap, right? And so what we started to think was, we kind of the gears in our head started turning. We were like, if interacting on crypto could be, if we could create user experiences that were as as fast and as inexpensive as buying something on Amazon, we could see if there was a technology infrastructure that could support that, we could imagine a world where our peers in entertainment, where our peers in kind of the brand space can make an interest into that space. So we got super, super bullish in Solana. That led us to making a bunch of investments in the Solana ecosystem. It also led us to founding WAGMI Beach, and yeah, the rest is history. So it's kind of a long-winded response, but yeah.
I love hearing all of that. That to me is one of the cool parts, is hearing kind of how people got into this, because that's my number one question for pretty much everybody. I ask that question on every single podcast, because to me, it's really interesting to know, how did you get into crypto? How did you get into NFTs? What makes you really bullish on all of this? That to me is always something really, really interesting. So how did you guys start formulating the idea of Catalina Whales? Where did that come from?
Yeah, totally. So we were like, okay, we're in Solana. We're starting to kind of get to know everybody in Solana. We bought some SMBs, and this is summer 2021. So I think this is SMBs. When did they mint? Was that in August?
I think so. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So we're right in that kind of period in the summer. I think it was we're kind of having a bunch of fun with DeFi, meeting everybody in Solana. NFTs are just starting to kind of become a thing, right? And we start to see okay, things are minting out, right? There's something happening here. And it was really exciting to us, because what was exciting was that there was a combination between, there's actually enough of a user base of people that are interested that projects can mint out, right? And this has the potential to create these amazing user experiences that got us excited, right? And even though the user experiences weren't there yet, we were starting to see what was possible. So we were but the one thing that we saw that we thought that was missing at the time was, you were seeing kind of like a lot of derivative stuff. You were seeing a lot of stuff that it didn't look like a ton of effort was being put into the creative, was being put into the storytelling, was being put into like the why. Why are you creating a community? What's the reason, right? It was just like, I'm early. I know how to do this. People are interested in NFTs. Let's like hit off a mint. And people were hitting off like, 10,000 supply, 3 Sol mints when Sol was at like 100, I don't remember, $150, $200. People were hitting those off like all day long. It was crazy. But almost, I wouldn't say all of them, but most of them were rugs, right?
Yeah.
Most of them ended up being rugs. Most of them you couldn't even name today.
Yep.
Right. And we thought that there was an opportunity to create a company that onboarded quality IP, top quality creators, and built like meaningful brands and built them on Solana, which and so that was kind of like the aha moment for us. We created WAGMI Beach, and we said, in order for us to go out and talk to like our peers in the entertainment space, talk to our peers in music and in television and in film or at brands and agencies, we are like, we should learn how to do this ourselves, right? Like we can't go out and talk like we know how to do this unless we try and do it ourselves. So we were like, let's create our own community. Let's create our own collection. Let's take a shot at this. Initially, I had the idea. So me and Mike were, we were partners along with a couple other partners in Wave 7. So we were talking all the time and brainstorming ideas. And we were like, why don't we just take a shot at this? So I was like, what's crazy is, across ETH, across Sol, nobody is like really done a whale NFT, and whales are so like the idea of a whale is so aspirational and such an important part of the culture, right? Like, what do you really want to be when you're in crypto, right?
Everybody wants to be a whale.
Be a fucking whale, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if you either are a whale and you want to celebrate it, or you're like you aspire to be a whale, right? And so we were like, how do we create something that's fun, that's funny, that's aspirational, that's positive, right? And so essentially, I came up with like a stupid name, like a kind of generic name at first. I was like, maybe we should call it Rich Whales or something. And then we were like, that's not good. And then Mike called me one night. He's like, okay, I got it. He's like, it's the Catalina Whale Mixer. And, so obviously like us being kind of like slightly boomerish, we're like a little bit older than most of the NFT demographic. We grew up on the Seth Rogans and the Judd Apatows and like all those type of films. And we felt that like, there was like this kind of natural synergy between crypto culture and the kind of like bro comedy culture of like Judd Apatow and Step Brothers and all these type of things. So we were like, let's make a community that's like in a brand that's based around, one, the aspirational idea of being a whale, and two, based on comedy that's inspired by this kind of bro comedy that we grew up on, right? And so we found this awesome dude who's like kind of an integral part of our team now, Moko, and who's an illustrator, and we just started kicking back ideas, and like the shit looked crazy at first. Like they were like some really ugly whales. So we went back and forth for a long time, and then we started kind of being like, okay, how do we like build a voice for this thing, right? And so we brought in our friend Alec. Alec at the time was a marketing manager at Interscope Records, which is the Universal system. He was thinking about making a change. He wanted to do something different. So we brought him on, and he kind of like started to establish like what the voice is for the whales. He's like a really funny dude. So a combination between like Alec starting to kind of like develop this voice, and then us kind of taking our favorite like Judd Apatow and funny movies and like taking them and reanimating them as whales, it started to kind of form like what the ethos of this brand would be about.
But yeah, no, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I remember because you guys minted, it was what, December 2021?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I remember when you guys minted, I remember seeing kind of the list of people who were involved. And I remember just being like, these are guys who are in the music industry. They get it and everything like that. Now, the reason why some people could say, Mark, you've talked about some of this before, because you're right, I did. I talked with MRG about a lot of this. But I wanted to kind of lay the grassroots for people who don't remember all of this and wanted to hear kind of a refresher, especially coming from you. And so, so with that, when you guys first started, you guys were in a time period where pretty much, like you mentioned a minute ago, if a project didn't rug, they usually tended to do pretty well because people were like, wow, these people didn't just like delete their Discord, delete their Twitter, and they didn't rug, right? And so you saw a lot of projects that just basically, if they stuck around, they did well, right? Mm-hmm. And So from that time period, that like October through December to where we're at now, if those projects are still around, a lot of them actually are doing fairly well. The issue is that the meta started to shift probably around when Luna crashed in May, is where I felt like all of a sudden there was different expectations from people, because now all of a sudden Solana crashed in price. People weren't doing as well. Their bags in crypto were down. The economy was taking a hit. Inflation was up. All these different things, right? And so there started to be all these factors all at once. And so, of course, our JPEGs are going to get hit by that, right? And so you guys were in this really interesting time period of like, you guys had from when you guys minted to, May, you guys had a super powerful run, right? Like you guys were doing really well. And it was one of those projects where I feel like a lot of people didn't really know anybody from the team, but it was one where it's like, yeah, Catalina Whales just keeps doing well. And that was kind of our interpretation from it. We weren't really seeing people from it, but we were just like, yeah, they're doing well. And you got to respect people who are doing well, right? And where I felt like the Web3 community started talking a lot about you guys is when you guys came out with the idea for Bubble Goose, right? And that was something where all of a sudden people were talking about what you were doing. It was right after also we had just had the OK Bears mint, which had gone crazy, right? And then, so if I remember things correctly, it went the OK Bears minted, then Trip and Ape Tribe minted, had a crazy run up, and then fell down immediately right after that. Then Luna crashed, and then I want to say it was like a month after Luna crashed that you guys minted, right? And during that time period, I think there were like a few other projects, I think like Great Goats and a few, I'm trying to remember there were some other hype mints that like didn't do shit, that aren't around anymore. But like there were a few that minted during that time, and it felt like people were super, super nervous to mint, right? It was like they went from really bullish after OK Bears to all of a sudden all these things are happening, Luna's crashing, crypto's crashing, and people were very, very skeptical to mint. So I want to hear from your end of things. From December through May, when you guys were doing really, really well, what did you feel like you guys were doing right? And what did you guys feel like in hindsight you look back on and you're like, shit, we probably should have focused more on this. But at the time we were doing well. We didn't really it was kind of why fix what's not broken mentality. So I want to hear from you, I guess, what did you guys feel like you were doing right? And what did you feel was kind of like just dumb luck? And then also what were you doing wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good question. So I think that what we were doing right was, I think we created an interesting brand. I think there was a lot of people like were naturally drawn towards like the energy of the team and the energy of the brand that we created. We were pretty consistently doing spaces and communicating. I think we in retrospect, the meta changed a lot, and I think we'll get into this a little bit later, but I think the meta shifted from when we launched this project till now to really focus around, to really be founder-focused projects. And I think the founders almost being like the most important like element as like a marketing channel and as a vehicle for communication. That wasn't necessarily the case in like the ETH NFTs that we were like following before that, and it wasn't even necessarily the case around the time that we minted. It was something that evolved. So I think that like one thing that like we should have done better, and I think that we still can do better, and that we're putting a lot of energy and focus on is over communicating and understanding like how to have like a really consistent two-way communication with our community, right? I think the other thing that we was like kind of a really huge learning experience for us, right? Is we probably did a run from, we minted at 1 SOL to like we were holding around 15 SOL for a while, right? And then we were kind of like in this kind of 12 to 15 range for a little while. And, our community was pretty consistent, but there was definitely a lot of people that were like, hey guys, we need to really know what you guys are doing, what's happening. It can't be as abstract as it is right now. And so that's what led us to releasing the blueprint, right? Which was our roadmap. And I think what we did, I think a lot of what we were able to communicate and explain to our community in the roadmap was really important. But I think that like one thing that we didn't realize is that you have to find a balance between really constant and consistent communication, but also under promising and over delivering, right? You can't say I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it by these deadlines unless you're 100% sure you're going to hit those deadlines. And even if you are sure you're going to hit the deadlines, you shouldn't hold yourself to I'm going to do this in 3 months and in 6 months and in 9 months and in 12 months, because we live in a constantly evolving space. What's important is to establish trust. What's important is to have a North Star, and then to be able to move and evolve and change and like, you know, and create special moments with your community. And I think when there's a few negative things happen when you tell everybody exactly what you want to do, right? One, you could potentially like create these deadlines and then not hit them, which is the worst thing because it erodes trust, right? I think the other thing that you can do is you can box yourself in, right? You want to be able to continue to evolve as a founder and as a team. You want to continue to like allow your community, new people are going to come into your community with new ideas, and the space evolves so quickly that you don't want to be stuck on like, man, I should be doing this because this is what's going to be best for my holders and this is going to be what's best for our brand. But I promised everybody I do that, and if I don't do that, I lied to them, right? So I think that like, you know, you said through May, right? I think a lot of the real learning experiences happened after May, which I really want to get into. I think in that time period, we were running and we were really feeling good. I think that like, I think the other big thing that like we're going to get into when we talk about the post-May was thinking that because we did Whales and Whales was like semi-successful for people, that we could manage multiple communities. And I think that we looked at, we kind of used our prior experience in entertainment and the references that we had like kind of from our previous experience and applied this to this really new space, right? So we looked at like a movie studio or a record label, right? And what would they do, right? They create something that's like a semi-hit. They're like, let's do another one. Let's sign another director. Let's write another script. Let's make another hit. Let's sign another artist. Let's make another record. Let's do this, right? And that's sustainable within music and in film and television. And the reason is because as long as you have enough resources to build those products, most of the work is front-loaded. You make a product. You have to do some marketing. The marketing goes away, and then it kind of lives in the marketplace and makes money and exists. It's kind of the opposite of how things work in Web3, right? In Web3, the easy part's like getting some shit and minting it out, right? Like, I'm not saying everybody could do it, but it's like, it's not rocket science, right? The hard part is like, what do you do afterwards?
Yep.
And I think that it's like, there's certain exceptions, you know, but I think it's like 98% of the time, it's a bad idea to run more than one community, right? Because I think you siphon resources, and I think that like you can do a lot of cool things, but I think that when you try and fragment that too much, but it's and actually, you know, I think maybe you could have a few, and some people have a few, but I think what you can't do is you can't try and create a scalable business where you're doing this over and over.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is because it's not like creating a movie, it's like creating a new startup, right? And what would you say if like you as a founder were like, yo, I'm going to do 10 different startups? I'd be like, yeah, you're not going to succeed, right? Yep. So if I'm like a VC, what do I say to a founder that even wants to do 2 things at once? I'm like, that's like your biggest mistake. Like, I really believe in you. You're great. I like all these other things about you, but you're not focusing on one thing. And I think the same thing applies for NFT communities.
Yeah, and I think too, so one of the things that I feel like everybody in the NFT space needs to hear this is that, you know, once again, we don't have a track record. Like when you talk about the music industry has a track record of 100 plus years, right? Yeah. We don't have that with the NFT world, right? So for most of us, when we say somebody's like experienced in NFTs, that means they were around pre-August 2021, right? Which is crazy in hindsight because we're talking about not even a year and a half, right? Or barely a year and a half, right? And so with that, I feel like a lot of times people are really quick to like jump down someone's throat. And to me, it doesn't mean don't hold people accountable. We should, but also we have to allow people to grow and learn, right? And so in hindsight, I could look back and say, when you guys minted in June, it might have been a good idea to delay that mint, right? Mm-hmm. Why? Because at that time, no mints were doing well. We had a the space was in this weird period of like, no one really knew, should we be bullish? Should we not be bullish? People were very, very nervous about what did the world look like and everything like that, right? So it probably went from June through, I don't know, like mid-July, if not August, by the time that we finally started having mints doing well again, right? Yeah. And so in hindsight, I think a lot of times people hold themselves to these deadlines. We said, oh, we were going to mint at this point, we should do that, right? But that's where I go back to, if the community has trust in you, they will allow you the grace of like, hey, we're going to give you the time period necessary to like do this at the right time, right? And the right time was not in June, right? Mind you, I'm saying all of this, hindsight being 2020, I could view it now, however many months later, and be like, yeah, it didn't make sense to mint that. At that time, if you had called me and asked me, I don't know if I would have given that opinion. So let's realize too, I've learned more in the last year or so, right? And so the way that I think about it is that the more trust the NFT space has in you, the more trust your community has in you, the more likely they are to accept when you decide, okay, hey, we need to not do this, or hey, we need to delay this, or hey, we need to pivot in this regard, right? And I think what a lot of people screwed up, and we talked about kind of the meta shifting. The meta really shifted when Frank kind of became popular, right? All of a sudden, it was like Frank was this larger-than-life personality. Frank was D-Gods, right? And at the same time, we kind of started to see that a little bit with Pablo from Cats on Crack. Like, that was another person where people were like, I don't know what he looks like. I don't know who he is. All of that. And that kind of like mystery got people excited, right? And so all of a sudden, you started to see this meta shifting from like the teams, basically from the meta shifting of like, if you weren't a rug, we supported you, to now all of a sudden people wanting to be like, but now we actually want to know who you are, what you're doing, what is your goal with this project and everything like that. And so the barometer kind of changed, right? And I think with that, we got to a point where we were in these uncharted territories of like, for the first time, the bull run of what we experienced from 2020 to 2021 was ending. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, we're getting into a point now where there's a lot of instability. And I think when there's a period of instability, you're going to look to the people that you trust the most in order to like say, okay, I feel confident that they're going to lead us out of this, right? I don't think at that time that you guys had developed the trust within the NFT space in general. From a Web 2 perspective, once again, you guys have been super successful. And if you call people that you've worked with for the last 10 years and said, do you trust me? Of course, they're going to say yes, right? But when it comes to the NFT space, a lot of it is, are we seeing you on Twitter? Are we seeing you on Spaces? Are we seeing you chat about other things besides just your project? Are you in Discord a lot? Do you talk with people who are like the lowest level members of your community? Do you talk to the lowest level members of other communities, right? And that's what they really view as like, this person's, they're in the shit, right? They're in the gutter with us, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that mentality is what people really love about the crypto space. It's like when we see people who are kind of in there in the mud with us, right? And I think for you guys were from the outside, I think a lot of people looked at you guys and they're like, okay, here are these two dudes who are a little bit older. They're, they're flashy in certain regards, like, because they've done a lot. And you guys have. And I respect that. I live in LA. I know when somebody has actually accomplished things and when someone's just like, a full of shit and just, it sounds like they know what they're talking about, but they really don't. Right. When I heard you guys talk, I was like, I know these dudes know what they're doing, right? But does that mean that you automatically know what you're doing in Web3? No, right? Mm-hmm. And mind you, when once again, most of us didn't know what we were doing. That there's a reason why there's not a long list of very successful NFT projects, right? We're all very much learning how to navigate this space, right? So getting into June, right? You guys are getting ready for the Bubble Goose mint. Did you ever think about delaying that mint?
Yeah, we thought about it a lot. We actually did delay it a few weeks. We delayed it for other reasons. We delayed it because we were trying to perfect the artwork. But yeah, it was really interesting. I think I'm trying to remember when it was 2-3 weeks before it was Trippin' Apes. And Trippin' Apes minted out and I think ran up to like 50, 60.
I think they went up to 80.
Yeah. It was, I remember it was crazy. And I think that like that happened and we were like, okay, there's a moment. And I don't know if you remember, but it's like, there were several months before that where like there was nothing new minting out, right? So it's like I can't remember who started it. Maybe it was OK Bears or maybe it was something before that.
I think it really was OK Bears that was the first one that did like incredibly well that everybody knew. There were a few others, but from probably like January through March, there was really nothing that was minting and doing well.
Right, because crypto had already fallen apart, right? Crypto fell apart, what was it, January 1st, right? And NFTs were still hanging on. And so people, in the beginning of the year, people weren't really sure. They're like, crypto is like totally falling apart. I'm still in my communities. I'm happy. A lot of people weren't dumping, but it didn't seem like a really good time. We had saw the correction of Solana from like, when we minted Whales, it was at 170 or something to, I think it dropped to 70 in January, right?
All right, guys. So just real quick, I want to explain what we just did. We just paused the video real quick just so we could double check Solana prices. Come on, we can't remember everything, okay? So we wanted to confirm Solana prices. So October 2021, I believe this is the first of the month that all of these were recorded, was 193 for Solana, November 204, December 172, January 93, February 85, March 120, April 94, and then May we dropped down to 47. So if I have it correctly, OK Bears minted right around $100 Solana,
right.
And then we had the Luna crash. I think it was May 12th, something like that, and we dropped down to 47. So maybe this is the end of the month that these are recorded. I don't know. But then yeah, we hovered around like basically $30 until November when we dropped down to 13.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, so I mean, we definitely certainly thought about delaying the mint. Where we were at the time was we had created a ton of really exciting momentum on Bubble Goose, right? It was I probably it was some of the the best kind of energy and the most excitement that I saw around any collection around then. There were things that had that were minting out and that were like Trippin' Apes was a good example, that had like a lot less hype than us at the time because we were marketing the project at the same time, that had like you said, had gone up to like a 50, 60, 80 soul floor price. So we felt like pretty confident up until that point, right? Then Luna happens and we didn't really know how to feel. I mean, it was like that was it was shocking for everybody. And like you said, like there wasn't like a roadmap for what's right and what's wrong. The question is, okay, so we've committed to doing this project. We put a lot of resources into doing it. People are really excited about it. We have a partner in Carl that wants to create a television show here. We believe that we can create something that's successful here, and we can and then we can build something. The question you have to ask yourself in crypto, as we all know, is, okay, things just crashed to 2 months ago. They were 100. Last week they were at 40. I think they crashed from 40 down to, I'm pretty sure it was 27, 28, like right around our mint day, maybe on our mint day. Our mint day, actually, we had already announced our mint day, and our mint day turned out being like, it's gotten worse since then. There's been worse days since then, like FTX days. But that day was probably like the worst day in crypto in like the last 4 years. Was the day that we minted Bubble Goose. It was funny because there were a lot of people that were like doing tweets like amongst like the world melting, like at least I had fun like minting these geese with my friends, but it ended up being this day. I guess we had felt like we had delayed it a little bit. We felt like it was important that we said that we were going to do something and we were going to do it. And we didn't know what the week after that or the week after that or the week after that was going to look like. So it was really, we were making a decision. And I think that's like, it's easy to look back in retrospect and be like, you should have waited in 2 months. In 2 months, it was going to be good. But you didn't know that at the time, right? And you never know that in crypto. So it's like, we were thinking, if we don't do this now, we're not going to be able to have the resources to do what this project is supposed to do. We have no idea if we're going to take like another like 50, 100% haircut as like the as the contagion of Luna continues to spread, which it did, right? Leading all the way up into FTX. So yeah, I mean, I definitely have a lot of things that I think we have a lot of things that I learned from that mint. I don't know if like the biggest one is the day that we minted. In retrospect, yes. In retrospect, we would have changed the whole model of like how, and we are changing the model of how we incubate other projects and what our relationship is with any other projects. Because I think that like, being able to be a resource to allow Premier IP to enter into Web3 is still our North Star. It's still a North Star for WAGMI. We learned so much from Bubble Goose and from the last year that how we do that and how to create a scalable business model has changed a lot. I don't know if it's if it's time for us to get into that right now. You tell me. But yeah, I think regarding mint date, we thought about it a lot. Ultimately, we said we don't know what happens tomorrow. We feel very confident that we're going to mint this out. The last like 4 or 5 projects that we looked at that had like a lot less hype than us had already like were trading significantly above their mint price. So we felt confident that we can do it. Even minting on the worst day of the year, we actually did trade, at around 2x of the mint price for a little while. But then with everything that continued to happen, it wasn't sustainable. Knowing what I know now, and understanding like how long it takes for potential contagion to set in, there was something like Luna, I wouldn't have done it. At the time, it felt like the safest bet.
Yeah. And I think it's tough because when you're asking yourself, like, when is the right time to mint? I think you have to ask yourself, like, what does the right time look like, right? Does the right time mean minting out? Because I'm kind of with you. I don't think minting out's that difficult. But to me, it's like, what does your upside look like, right? Do you have the ability to go from, because you guys minted at what, 7 SOL?
Yeah.
So can you run from 7 SOL to 70 at that time? If the answer is no, then to me, it's kind of like, is it the right time to mint? I don't know, right? Yeah. And it was also a time period where, we had just gotten used to really, really high Solana prices. And so therefore we were used to really, really low mint prices, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden I remember when you guys came out and said, it's going to be a 7 SOL mint. And I remember people being like, are these motherfuckers crazy? Like 7 SOL in this economy? And in hindsight, it's like 7 SOL is not that crazy. We've seen, since then, we've seen 10 SOL. We've, seen a lot. But at the time, you guys were the first people to do that, right? Yeah. And so as a result of that, there's always going to be people that go, well, you're money hungry, you're money grabbing, whatever, right? And so I go back to it. My whole thing is the more that people trust you, the more likely they are to hear you out about why you're making the decisions that you're making, what you view as a success, like why you guys are choosing to mint right now. And I think that's an important lesson for everybody right now is that, like, if you're an NFT project and you really want to make sure that you are doing your absolute best, people have to trust you. And so I think with that way you're able to actually get from them their honest, answer on what they think you guys should do. And there's a lot that you can learn from the community, right? Like there's so much that you can learn from hearing them out and hearing why they believe certain things and stuff like that. I remember Frank said at one point, it was always something that stuck with me. He's like, half the time when I announce something, it doesn't mean I'm stuck on that idea. It means I want you to tear it apart and then I'll build it back from there. And the idea will be that much better, but I need you to tear it apart because there's going to be things that you're thinking about it that I'm not, right? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the perspectives that we have a lot of times in this space is, well, if I say something, I have to do that, right? To me, that's such a short-sighted opinion because if you say something and somebody goes, well, actually, I wouldn't do that because of this, this, and this, to me, you have new information now. So if you still stick with what you said you were going to do after you just got that new information, you are shooting yourself in the foot, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there was for a long time this meta of like, but if I say something, I have to do that, right? And because there was also a meta for a long period of time of like, if we have a roadmap, we have to do every single thing that's on that roadmap. And to me, I'm always like, dude, at the end of the day, what your job is as an NFT founder is to take care of your holders. The easiest way to make your holders happy is have that floor price booming, right? And for that, you have to change with how the meta is going to know what you need to do in order to keep that floor price up, to keep people from wanting to sell, right? Like at the end of the day, if you inspire people to feel like, well, shit, these guys know what's up, they know what's happening, they're listening to us and everything like that, then they're less likely to want to sell because they're like, well, I believe in these people, right? And if less people are selling, floor price, you have a supply shock, floor price goes up, right? So I think all of it goes back to is communication, right? And I think that was something so I want to hear from you guys at that point. How did you feel like your communication was with your holders and then also with the overall NFT space? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but you would say that you guys have kind of an older demographic when it comes to your holder base, right?
Yeah, I think we have a slightly older demographic. I think we the kind of the boomer dad constituency of the Solana NFT ecosystem kind of is attracted to whales. So there's definitely some youngsters, but I think that I think we skew on the older side for Solana NFTs. Yeah. Yeah.
So okay. So with that, how did you feel like your communication at that time was with your holders, and then also just with the overall NFT space?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that leading into Bubble Goose or post Bubble Goose?
Both.
Yeah. So I think that we were pretty consistent about doing spaces and communicating with our holders. I think that there was a little bit of a conception about us that we were kind of stuck up and we didn't collaborate with other people, which I understand the reasoning, which wasn't our intention. I think it was more that we were kind of here doing our own thing. I think in retrospect, there's a lot of opportunities to get involved with other communities, to talk about what they're doing, to share what you're doing, to see how you could help them. And I don't think we did enough of that. So I think I think we were doing I think we got like a B-, C+ in communicating with our community during that time. I think we were doing a really terrible job of of being active and being involved with other communities. I wouldn't say that we weren't involved in the NFT community in general. Like, I think a lot of most founders and people running protocols and people that are kind of on the founder side of things do know us and we have personal relationships with, right? I think that what we probably didn't do a great job with is getting to know the people in those other communities, right? And I think that's really important because I think ultimately we're like one big small community is Solana NFTs. I think it's really we call it multiple communities, but it's really kind of like people bouncing around different rooms of the same party. You know what I mean? And I don't think we did a really great job of that. I think that post Bubble Goose, I think we could, whether we're doing that now or later, I think there's a laundry list of things that I think we learned from the Bubble Goose mint, from the run up, and from the retracement afterwards. But I think that just being completely honest, we post Bubble Goose, we were pretty shook because we had gone from December through June, pretty much like you said, nobody really had anything bad to say about us. We weren't like the superstars. There was things that people were more excited about. Obviously things like OK Bears came out and we were running. I think by that point, D-Gods was doing really, really well. We hadn't but we were stable. People trusted us. People knew us. And there was it was pretty unlikely for us to get FUD on anything. Right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You know what I mean? People were okay, yeah, these are those dudes. They're solid, whatever. And I think the big reason is we rarely would see a retracement. We had we were steady going up, right? We went from 1 to 12 to 15. We might have gone from 15 back to 12. Maybe there was a time somewhere in that period where we went down to 7 for a little bit. It was okay, whatever. And then people came in and supported it and we bounced back up to that 10, 12. And then we organically, before making the Bubble Goose announcement, had moved up into the 30th range. And so that felt pretty good, right? Five months after the project, it's 30 times the mint price. And it felt really good. So like you said, we were the first people to do a high mint price. It was I think the USD value, I can't exactly remember, but I think it was around $150.
Yeah, I want to say it was 150.
It was 150, whereas it's Whales was higher at the time at 1 SOL.
Yeah,
it was at 170. This is 70 SOL. So, but there was definitely a lot of the 1 SOL equals 1 SOL crowd definitely turned on us, and there was a lot of these Bubble Gooses a rug spaces going into it, and then obviously there's so much negative sentiment happening at the time. We go through with this. We come out the gate, we go up to 15-ish, we don't hold it that long, and then it's for a long time that we're just holding the floor at mint price, which doesn't feel that good to everybody. So what I was trying to get at is this was a big shocker for us because it's generally we hadn't felt the wrath of the NFT community yet, and we had been in it for 6 months, and a lot of these people were our friends. Our actual real life friends, a lot of kind of the influencers and the big whales in the ecosystem and the other founders and stuff. We considered them our friends, and we thought that we were doing honorable business. We were doing honorable business, but now we were in this position where the decisions that we made were making people second guess us, right? And so I think that in retrospect, this wasn't the right thing to do, but we froze up a little bit, right? And for a couple different reasons, right? One, there was so much excitement about Bubble Goose. I don't know if you remember at the time, but it was we ran it up to 200,000 Twitter followers. There was we would post one thing online and we'd post something on Twitter and it'd get thousands and thousands of likes. It was the level of engagement was crazy. In retrospect, thinking back on where some of that engagement came, it was that weird time where it was there was like kind of all these, it was like the work in the whitelist meta, and there was like all the kind of like, you know, there was this random like Nigerian crowd that showed up for a while and then disappeared. And but at the same but it felt pretty like energizing and explosive on a level that like we didn't feel with the whales. Like when we minted whales, we weren't sure we were going to mint out. We felt a lot of good energy, and then like we were really pleasantly surprised we mint out. And then like the fact that it minted out and then it 10x'd in the next couple of days, like we didn't know that was going to happen. The kind of the opposite with Bubble Goose. We compared the energy of whales, pre-whales, and we were like, if we have this much energy pre-Bubble Goose, if things are this explosive, like this thing's like, you know, going to be really, really explosive. It felt like it was going to be explosive out the gate. So we completely like just misjudged that.
Well, and I think too, one of the interesting ways to think about that is when you guys minted Catalina Whales, your mint price was 1 SOL, right? So if you run up to 10 SOL, yeah, you just 10x'd everybody, right? Exactly. But if you don't go from 7 SOL to 70 SOL with Bubble Goose, then you're not 10x'ing, right? Exactly. And I think that's one of the aspects of mint price that I don't think people think often enough about, is that for you, I get it. As the project founder, you guys receive the Solana there. You guys are able to utilize that in whatever ways that you need to grow the business and everything like that. But what you're not thinking about is from the consumer perspective of, if I go and I put 10 SOL into, or 7 SOL into Bubble Goose, and you guys don't go to 20 or 30 SOL, well then I'm not getting a huge return on my money. But yet at the same time that you guys were, I want to say it was probably around a few weeks after you guys minted was when Liberty Square minted, right? Mm-hmm. And Liberty Square, I believe, minted at, for if you were on whitelist, 0.68, right? Yeah. Super low amount, right? Mm-hmm. And I give a lot of credit to Liberty.
Which at the time, what was that? It was like $15 or something.
Yeah, and it was not shit, right? Yeah. And they held right around like 1 SOL for quite a long period, and then they ended up running to 30, right. And then they've retraced a little bit and whatever. But with that, I think when you think about mint price, people will be kinder to you. And once again, this is where it's hindsight's 2020, right? Yeah. I get why you guys minted at 7 SOL, but by minting at 7 SOL, you guys set an expectation that was almost impossible to match, right? Yeah. And then for a project where you guys really hadn't had people fudding you, you didn't really have people talking shit about you, all of a sudden you gave them ammunition to talk shit about you, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that projects need to think about is like, whether people like you or hate you or whatever, if you give them ammunition, they will use it. And so with that, minting at 7 SOL, once again, hindsight, not the best idea. If you guys had minted at 1 SOL, you probably would have ran up, in hindsight, maybe 20 or 30, right? Yep. Because people would have been at that point, you would have had people who would have been able to accumulate bigger bags, all of that. Instead, you have people who have like 1 or 2. When people only have 1 or 2, there's just way more people that are going to flip. And so it just makes it damn near impossible for your floor price to run up, right? Yeah. These are the things where, once again, and somebody could find a flaw in my argument right now. That's possible. But my thing is, with this, we learn from every experience. So you guys had your first L in the Solana space. At the same time as all of this is occurring, the floor price on Catalina Whales is now going down, right? Because people were buying Catalina Whales so that they could get whitelist to Bubble Goose. So what was that like, of kind of both kind of, you got one uppercut and then you got another, punch with the left hand, so what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. So, I mean, on the one sense, it's like there was kind of, we went from this moment of euphoria where we had this natural slow burn from 1 to 30, right? And then I think in like one day, we went from like 30 to 65, right? I can't remember what we did that day. Something Bubble Goose related. And then we ran up to like all-time high of like 175 or something, right? And then, yeah. So then like, I think within...
And mind you, that was when Solana price was still right around like $100, right?
No, this was during Bubble Goose. So this was at Bubble Goose, Solana price was at $28.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was at 28. So, but you know what? There was a point where it was more like 40 or 50. Yeah. Where it was more like 40 or 50 in the run up because there had been a big crash. I can't remember. Yeah. There was definitely a point where you might be right where it was at those higher numbers. I don't know if it was quite at 100.
Because there was a time period.
The run up to Bubble Goose.
Yeah, because we had the time period where like DGods was at 300 SOL, and that was when it was 100 SOL. So I remember a DGod was worth $30,000, and then a OK Bear, I think they were at 250 sold, and that was once again same time period, and so it was $25,000 for an okay bear, right? And then Trippin' Apes, I think so right around like $8,000. And so on and so forth.
There was a time where whales, I think the floor price was like 12, 13, 14K.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that whole period before and then what the
we all blacked out from that time period. We have to forget that the prices were once that. Otherwise, we set our expectations way too high right now. But yeah, that time period did exist. I forgot about it.
I know. I remember like I've like a couple buddies who are like early Solana dudes who like just came in with like the cater at that time and bought like the super grails.
Yeah.
And like at the time where we were mooning and at the time where it's like they like literally picked like the worst entry point. And I remember just like screenshotting and like I was so excited about that. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, God, you guys spent like so much USD on this thing. Like I hope we're still friends, man.
Yeah. And that's the part where it's tough, like because you have to factor in all of that, right? Like there are people that I think that's the aspect of things that people forget all the time is that, you know, if someone got into Solana when Solana was like worth basically nothing, okay, cool. You have the ability to, you know, do a lot with that Solana and everything like that because you had pretty low amount of USD that you would have put in to get a ton of Solana, right?
Right.
But then we ran up to where Solana's $250. You're putting $1,000 and you're getting 4 Solana, right? Crazy to think about that right now, right? But there was a time period where that was very normal, right? And so I think as a result of that, it skews everybody's perceptions of certain things. So when you do have that massive run up of floor price, and that's where you'll get people that are like, you know, every once in a while you'll see somebody tweet out, well, if your floor price is this, that doesn't mean that like you're truly at all-time high because your USD price, you were higher this time. It's like, you're right. And that's where we have to factor in all these feelings because these feelings affect how people then treat your project, right? Because if they did buy in at $14,000 for a Catalina whale, they're very angry, right? And so even though it's not necessarily your fault that Luna crashed and the price of Solana went down as a result and all these like macro effects and things like that, but those are things that no matter if you were the cause of it or not,
it's still our responsibility.
It's still your responsibility.
And the end result is the same regardless of our intentions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
The end result's the same, and it doesn't change your feelings.
Right.
It doesn't change the other person's feelings, like no matter what our intentions. I think our intentions matter, right? It matters because if you're going to trust our next decisions, right? But like the results are the results, right? And I think to your point, like getting back to what the original question was, right? Is like what happened with our communication after these two things happened? So then that happens. Bubble Goose comes out. I think we go from like 175 to 60 like in a couple days, right?
Yeah.
We had plans for all these other things. So for one, we had signed a bunch of other projects, really interesting things that we thought and think could be really huge in the space. We had like signed deals ready to go, and we were like going to try kind of create this movie studio type of thing where we were going to keep running these things out, right? Obviously, it becomes really clear within like 2 days that that's like a terrible idea, right? That we have like so much stuff to clean up that people just spent all this money on this. Introducing any new thing to sell to people would be completely irresponsible at this time. And so even though so we're in this kind of catch-22, right? To deliver what I said that I'm going to do which is like, hey, Whales, I told you that you're going to have the key to WAGMI Beach, and you're going to keep on getting things like WAGMI, like all this really high-quality stuff that we're introducing to the ecosystem. You have a whale, and you get that, right? But because Bubble Goose doesn't perform like we want to do, it would be unconscionable for me to like start introducing these new things. So I have to put all these other projects on hold. So what does that mean? So it means I'm like, one, I have like all this stuff that I have to like heal these two communities and get them back to a good place. But also like one of the promises is now broken, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, there was like subsequent stuff that we wanted to do with Big Whale Energy and Beached Whales, which were essentially expanding the Catalina community, which I could get into like why that probably wasn't a good idea. What I've learned now, I've learned that expansion was not a good idea. But it was something that I wanted to do. It was something I promised. It was something the community was really excited about. So now all those two big things, which were like where a lot of the value, where whales were planning to extract a lot of the value, right? What was supposed to happen, right? You get your Bubble Goose. It goes 10x. You either sell it or you buy into this community because you like it. And more of these stuff coming. We leverage our unique relationships across entertainment to continue to bring in these things that are really exciting. Now we can't do that because we have to focus on what we have here. And a lot of the value drivers behind what we were planning to do next was about these subsequent things that we're going to have, which we just have to put on hold. So to be honest, like, we were pretty shook, dude. We're feeling FUD for the first time. We have all these big deals that we like, that everybody wants, that I have the people on the client creator side that are like excited to do these things, developing artwork, have all this shit that's ready to go that I know is a smash if done right. Can't do it. Boom. Sorry, that conversation's over for like a long time now. The Whales were all expecting all this stuff. I had promised this stuff. I had talked about it. I had brought, like, shared creatively what these things were going to be and hyped it. Sorry, that's just not happening now. Oh, the expansion of the Whales brand. You're going to expand your brand and you're going to introduce like new things into the ecosystem when your floor prices just like took like a 70% haircut? No, you're not. So like, we made the mistake that a lot of our value drivers came from introducing like, new collectibles products, which I still think in the right market are great products and when they could stand on their own. Not being so tied to the Whales, right? Not being managed by us though. So the model has to change, which we'll get into a little bit later. But so that's all that shit's gone. Now, what's the other things that are like gonna turn this ship around, right? What are the other things that I've been promising for a long time, that I've been working on for a long time, that I'm really excited about? That we're gonna nail it with our music deal, that we're gonna nail it with our TV deal, right? That we're going to do a partnership like never been done before, right? And we're going to expose this IP and this community to non-crypto native users and bring in buy-in to this community and interest in Solana NFTs, specifically the Whales, at like a grand level like we haven't seen before. That's kind of like that's what what the vision is, right? And what's going on with that? Well, it's just we're dealing with like red tape with we're dealing with a handful of things. One, these deals take a long time to do. It's just a fact. It takes a long time. You have a brand new IP. You have these big enterprise companies that are going to be doing something in crypto, which they're scared about. There's a lot of due diligence. There's a lot of negotiation. There's a lot of CYA, making sure that they're not getting associated with something that like could get them in legal trouble later. Two, any developmental act or unknown movie director or whatever, which is essentially what Catalina Whales is, right? A brand new piece of IP. I don't care what my relationships are. I'm not going to get a deal done overnight. I got to sell the dream. I got to have a lot of great conversations. I got to really get buy-in, right? So, I have these two really real conversations that feel pretty close to being done. We're months away from being able to announce those deals at the time, right? So what am I stuck with then, right? Those are the two things that I promised everybody. Those are the two things that I felt really confident about. Was A, I'm going to deliver on on film. B, I'm going to deliver on music. And C, I'm going to deliver on this external IP and these new collections that you're going to have access to. So all three of those aren't happening now for various different reasons. So I'm feel pretty shook. I don't know what to talk about. I'm feeling negativity from the community for the first time. It's really emotionally hard. And I feel really defeated, And so what I did, I tried my best. I did a lot of town halls, in the Discord. We did spaces and whatever. But what really happened is I didn't know what to say. And I'm just being real honest, man. I was I had to go back to the drawing board and figure out how do I make this right. And so you asked how our communication was with the greater Solana community and how it was with our holders. I was trying my best, but I don't think I did a good job.
I think a lot of it comes back to communication is a really difficult thing, right? Yeah. And there's no perfect answer on how to handle all of this, right? Yeah. I think the part about it that, to me, a lot of this, being a project founder and having your holders, to me it's like a weird marriage, right? Where if your communication falls apart, the trust falls apart, and the trust falls apart, you're probably doomed, right? Yeah. But to me, I think the way that you almost have to think about it is when you're having a conversation with them at that point, it's explaining to them, guys. So, because I remember the first podcast episode I did with MRG, he talked about beached whales a little bit, right? And so even at one point I was kind of well, are they doing beached whales still? I was that would be a fuck up, whatever. But I wasn't sure what you guys are doing, right? And I think a lot of it is when we have these moments occurring where things don't go according to plans, I think it's really important to have very open conversations and say, guys, listen, we can stick with what we promised you. here's what will most likely happen if we do that, right? Like if you guys drop Beached Whales after that, and let's say you did a 3 soul mint or whatever, you probably would have had Beached Whales go under. They probably would have gone to flat 0. And then Catalina Whales probably would have dropped down from like whatever you guys were at after, a week or so after Bubble Goose, you probably would have dropped down to like 15 soul. It would have been catastrophic, right? And so when you explain to people, guys, like here's the reality of it. We just simply can't do that, right? Like if we do that, we'd be screwing you guys as our holders, right? And so I go back to the communication aspect of it is really important, and I think the blunt honesty is really important. But I think the part about what makes blunt honesty hard at that point was we had just come off one of the greatest bull runs of all time, right? Where everybody was killing it, right? Yeah. It's like you saw so many people that were like, I made millions in 2021 and 2020, whatever. I'm like, bro, I want to know what you did in like 2018. I want to know what you're going to do in 2023. I don't give a shit what you did in the greatest bull run that I've experienced in my 30 years of living, right? Yeah. And so, but I think a lot of times it's, we look at like it's pride gets in the way a little bit, right? Of admitting like, holy shit, we just had an epic failure, right? And that's tough to admit, especially because once again, you guys have been super successful in Web 2. So you're probably not used to taking a lot of L's, right? And even with the music industry is a little different. If you sign 10 acts and 7 of them suck ass, but those 3 blow the hell up, you guys are doing great, right? Exactly. Because you don't have holders to answer to. You have a record label to answer to. But if you already have 3 artists that are blowing up and doing incredible things, they don't really care about the 7 that didn't work out, right? It's a little different with the NFT space because there's going to be somebody that goes, you know what? Bubble Goose is going to be the next big thing. And they take 150 soul, which is their entire bag, and they throw all that into Bubble Goose, and it doesn't pan out, right? Yeah. And now those people hate you, right? Yeah, exactly. And so it's different from the music industry. Of you can't be like, well, we're just going to put out 10 projects then and just see what sticks. Because at that point, nobody will believe in you, so all of them won't stick, right? Yeah, exactly. So it's a completely different approach to things that I think people have to really like. That's really the part about this podcast episode that I want people to think about is think about what you would have done in this situation, right? Yeah. And think about how would you have handled it, because it's not easy to think about. Like and especially when, once again, we're answering this damn near a year later, right? And so it's really difficult to say at that moment in time what you would have done. And I think now in hindsight, I would suggest to everybody, when you have moments like this, take a step back, maybe call other project founders and just be like, honestly, like what, because here's the thing. I think a lot of times we look at other NFT project founders as competition. I will never view them as competition because I view this very similarly to like the trading card market, right? If I'm really big on Mike Trout, right? Does that mean if LeBron James does well that Mike Trout cards are not going to do well? No, that doesn't mean that, right? There are, I sold a Ken Griffey card the other day for the most money I've ever sold a trading card for. Ken Griffey's been retired for 20 years. So the reality of it is it's not, when one guy does well, it doesn't mean that your other cards aren't going to do well, right? So I'm not sitting there going, well, shit, if LeBron does well, my Giannis collection doesn't do well. No. And so, with the NFT space, there's a lot of times where we view it as competition. And part of it is because we don't have as large of a market available to us, right? We don't have, 5 million people that are trading NFTs and stuff like that. We don't have that yet. Hopefully the plan is at some point that we will have that. And at that point, we'll all be killing it if we're still here, right? And so, which we should be. And so, but I think with that, people get really nervous. I think it's important to ask other people at that moment, what do you guys suggest? I think we've now gotten to the point where I do feel like because we're in this bear market, we've all kind of realized we're all in this together kind of mindset of we now really need to help each other out, support each other, ask each other for advice and things like that. Because once again, we need more projects that are at 100, 200 soul. And instead of people dunking on projects that get up to that point and then fall back, we got to find a way for more projects to get to that 100 and 200 soul and stay there and then grow steadily from there, right? So, okay, so getting into, so you guys have all these plans, you decide you have to scrap several of them, right? And then you guys also realize what did July and August and things like that look like to you guys? Was it, because I think at one point too, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, I think sometimes people think, well, okay, if one thing doesn't work out, you automatically have a plan for what to do next, right? Which is not realistic, right? In reality, you need some time to figure out okay, so let's regroup because we had this whole plan of what we thought we were going to do. All of a sudden now we have to change it, right? And people can say until they're blue in the face, oh, I would have done this, I would have done that. You don't know know, unless you've been in your shoes, you don't know what you would have done, right? So from Bubble Goose not really doing well and kind of having that shock of like, holy shit, the things that we had planned, we have to scratch. How long did it really take you guys before you felt like, okay, now we have a grasp on things. Now we kind of know what we need to do?
I mean, honestly, it took till very recently, to be like completely honest. Yeah. It just took like a lot of internal trial and error. It took like trying to figure out how to form the team in the right way, how to like, you know, how to have the right internal support. I think that one of our kind of biggest mistakes was, I think the foundation for like the big things that we were trying to do was to do these kind of like these big entertainment partnerships that we feel like can be really transformative and can like take what we feel is really special about these Web3 collectible communities and make them accessible to larger audiences. And we feel like that's like our special sauce, right? I think what we did a bad job of is realizing that I don't care what your special sauce is. Along the way, there's these baseline things you have to do to build a great community. There's these baseline things you have to do to keep up with the innovations in Web3. And if you don't do that, I don't care like how good your big idea is, you're never going to get there, right? And so I think that we, like I said, we had it kind of like easy for that first 6 months. So I think we didn't have to think about that because we were on a steady incline. We were talking, we were having fun. We were like, our content was funny. People were attracted to us. And nobody could be that mad, right? Because there had never been like a correction. So for that reason, we didn't have to innovate, right? Because there hadn't been a big enough correction in the market. There had been some, but there hadn't been a real correction. There hadn't been like real FUD. And it seemed like our plan was working. So I think we were complacent. And I think that for that reason, we weren't focusing on like these evolving narratives. Probably the two of the biggest were like short-term yield and value to like your holders. We had our reasons for not wanting to do a token and not wanting to do whatever else, and I still stand by those reasons. But if it wasn't a token, it should have been something else that like is giving people short-term yield without having to, or you know, I don't know if yield's the right word, but a way to like to get value short-term without having to sell. I think it became an important narrative and it became really important. And we were too comfortable that we didn't focus on that. I think the other one was like, you know, the founder as center narrative that became really an important thing. We were always front and center on our spaces, but we didn't take it really, really seriously because again, we were complacent. We were cool. We thought our brand was doing just fine and we could do it the way we were doing it. So we weren't paying enough attention to other people and what was working with them. Right. And it took for us to have this major, like, kind of like kick in the head for us to be like, all right, what's everybody else doing? Yeah. We better start fucking paying attention because like we're like tail spinning, right? And so you asked the question, like, what did we do in that period? How did our communication work? I really made a huge effort to start communicating with like our community in general and particularly our most active holders, our biggest holders, our most active holders, the people that wanted to have a two-way conversation. And I did open up a lot of channels for two-way conversation in the Discord. I started this Telegram thread with a lot of the biggest holders. And I had this really I started to develop this two-way conversation and really try and be like, okay, we did this okay up until this point, but we're not doing the Web3 thing well enough. We're not listening to our community well enough. And we're not like understanding what they want and getting the full benefit of like listening to what other people say. To your point of putting an idea out and saying, this is an idea, what should we do now? Like, take this, run with it, like come back to me with something, give me feedback. We weren't doing a good job at that. So it took this thing for us to learn that. And honestly, I think that we went out to our community. We said, okay, let's figure out how to do this better. We did some town halls. I even like brought on board as a consultant, like a big member of the community who was able to like talk to like dozens of holders, get their feedback, put together a big report. And then we started talking to the community about how we were actioning on these things. So I think we actioned on a lot. And I think that like from the period from then through like December, I just think we got a lot better. We got a lot better at like understanding what the community needs. I think and having a type of a two-way communication. We got a lot better at understanding what like two-way value really means, right? Short term and long term. And I think that's like informed what we're doing next. Yeah, and I think so. I think that is that's what we focused on. But I think that this was the thing that made it so tricky, though, right? I think a lot of what people loved about us and our brand was the energy. It was about having fun. It was about laughing. It was about celebrating. And like for that first 6 months, we did nothing but celebrate. But what happens when it's like the guys who are like the fun dudes to hang out with and whatever, like when shit's going bad, you know what I mean? It's like when you have like the party animal, like that's depressed. It's like, you know, it's like, and some communities I think are more suited, or brands are more suited to be able to deal with the downturns and deal with the serious stuff. I don't think we weren't set up to deal with seriousness, because all we had been doing was having parties on Spaces, you know what I mean? And like, and it was all fun. And we had to like kind of soul search to be like, who are we as founders and what are we as a collection when we're doing bad? And I think that like, you know, there was this difficult time where we were doing our like Whale Wednesday Spaces, and like the energy just wasn't there, like because the community wasn't excited, and we were like shook, you know, and we were like, fuck, like we weren't used to this. We were used to like having this two-way kind of this energy where we were like building off, the community was building us up, we're building off each other and we're supporting each other. So it took like a lot of soul searching to be able to get to that period. It took a lot of talking with members of the community and listening and getting to the place that we are now, where we feel like reinvigorated and excited about what's coming next. But to answer your question, I think we didn't do a great job of communicating at that time. And I think that like we didn't know how to be the whales. We didn't know how to be the whales when we were losing. You know what I mean?
I think a big part of it is being like blunt and honest. Like I heard Nate Rivers in a space the other day talking about OK Bears, right? And he had talked about some of the money he had lost, right? Yeah. And I was like, you know, I respect hearing him admit an L, right? And now, does that mean, obviously, until you sell, it's never completely an L, right? Like, but it was interesting to hear him open up and kind of be vulnerable about like, hey, I was somebody that was like super, super confident in what I was talking about with OK Bears. I was saying we were going to flip D guys, yada, yada, yada. I was wrong, right? Yeah. And to me, I think that's awesome to be able to admit that, right? And does that mean that like, am I saying that because I'm a DGOT holder? No, I'm saying that because I respect the fact of when anybody is able to admit in life that they weren't right? And that they may have made mistakes and they've learned from them and everything like that. Dude, I've made mistakes. Like, I think back about my podcast and like I got really nervous about where we were at in June, and I didn't really double down as hard as I should have in like June and July, right? Yeah. But I was very nervous. I was like, shit, like, is this something that's worth the amount of time I had to put into it at a time where I wasn't really making money from it, right? And so it was something where, you know, once again, I respect anybody who's able to take a vulnerable look at themselves and go, here's what we were doing wrong. Here's what we were doing wrong as an individual. Here's what we were doing wrong as a team. And here's what we're learning from it. So when I asked you the question of like, how long did it take for you guys to kind of figure out like what you needed to do? If you had answered a month or 2 months, I would have been like, this motherfucker. But the fact that you said up until recent, I respect that, because if you said to me a month or two, I would have been like, there's no shot, because like where was the action in that time period since then, right? Yeah. But the fact that you are admitting, yeah, it took a minute, I respect that, because I think that's realistic. I think it's difficult to know exactly what to do when you first start taking on water, right? And that's essentially what you guys were doing, taking on water. You're trying to bail it out, but you're going underwater pretty quickly, right? And so once again, I think that's where we get into sometimes the aspect of, and I think this is where it comes from. We get people who go, well, I would have done this, I would have done that, but it's because they haven't heard you be vulnerable and say, yo, the reality of it is it took us a minute to figure it out, right? Yeah. I think there's a lot of people, and I hope people, because this is the reaction I have to it, and I'm not just saying this because you're sitting on my couch, but I have the reaction of like, I respect the fact that you're coming here today and you're being that honest, because I think it takes a lot. And I think that's something where if more projects did that, we would probably have like a nicer overall community. But I think the attitude about it is, I think holders get frustrated because they don't hear founders admit a mistake, right? Yeah. And to me, it's like, man, celebrate your wins, but also admit your losses. And like, dude, it's important to do that because that's life. You're never going to take unlimited wins. You're going to have losses. And when you have a loss, admit it, own it, and talk about the path moving forward. But like, be realistic with people. Like, I still think there's a lot of projects that mismanaged funds in the last year that are really embarrassed to admit that. And I'm like, dude, as a consumer, I mismanage my funds. Yeah. So if every investor and everything like that always manage their funds properly, we'd never have like these massive companies that go under and stuff like that. The reality of it is nobody's track record is perfect with all of that. Yeah. But we have this perception sometimes of like, well, if we've invested our money into these people, we're hoping that they have it figured out, right? Yeah, exactly. And I think that's just society's way of viewing things. But I think the reality of it is, when unprecedented things happen, and like Luna crashing, going from literally $87 to like 0.0005 in a day is crazy, and then FTX crashing, like all of those different things, like it is truly uncharted territory. And with that, I think we also have to have the empathy to understand that it puts people in positions that they didn't realize they were going to be in. Yeah. And I think it takes empathy on one aspect of understanding that's the position that somebody else is in. And then on the other aspect, it takes humility to admit that you're in that position now, right? Yeah. And so I think that's one of the, why I value this conversation and why I'm excited to hear about, we'll transition shortly here into like what you guys are doing now, what's coming up and everything like that. But I think I have a lot of respect for you coming here today and admitting that it took you guys a minute to figure out what the fuck was going on after all of that. Because I can very much understand that was probably not an easy time period, especially when you got people yelling at you and you're not used to that.
Yeah, totally. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it was a humbling experience, and I think though, what I will say coming out of it, right? And I feel like I finally feel like in January, that's when we came out of it. It was also there was this weird dynamic between like all of this is happening, but we had also planned to do the big event, the Catalina Whale Mixer. So we're like planning this party in Miami. We're planning like a celebration. It's supposed to be like the end of the year, the celebration, 1 year of Whales, like the big thing everybody had gone toward. So you could kind of like imagine how that feels behind the scenes. Like, one, should you even be throwing a party when like literally crypto is melting? Like not only like our collection, like our whole ecosystem, Solana, FTX, the whole thing. And like we're throwing a party, but again, like we promised our holders we're gonna do it. We like miraculously we got sponsors that we were able to pay for it, so we didn't have to use money from our treasury, and we were able to make this thing happen. But there's this weird like kind of like two-sided thing happening, right? Like we almost have to like keep on the facade of like, yo, we're the Whales, let's do this, let's go and like let's party in Miami. Or at the same time, like behind the scenes, we're like, fuck, dude, we're like really trying to figure this out. Because like what I will say is like we're dedicated to what we're doing here. We're focused on like the North Star. We're focused long term on what this is. We will not like do I know how to do it now? No, I don't. And I think to your point earlier, I think that anybody that tells you that they're an expert, anybody that tells you that they know how to do this, those are probably the people that like, I would take like a second look at. I think that even like across crypto, some of the people that we trusted the most, it turned out like some of them like were actually doing nefarious things. Some of them like they just made the wrong decisions, right? So I think a lot of smart people made bad decisions. We were in an environment that was a tough environment, and like, it's. I think it was a difficult situation for a lot of projects and a lot of founders, and I think that we're one of them. I think that like, I think if anything, like now that we're in January and I feel like good about where we are, and I feel like we have a reset and I feel like we have a clear path forward. I will say, as hard as that period was, I feel like it was like, that was like NFT 101 for me. You know what I mean? I feel like we, like I said before, in that pre-May period, we were able to just coast and not learn. I think that we were kind of like as you said, as the boat's taking on water, you're forced to like learn how to swim. And I think what that meant is we were forced to like learn how to have a better two-way relationship with our community. We're forced to be more humble and empathetic to other projects. There were a lot of people that like came and go, and like I didn't really like think twice about them, because you think if you're doing successful, like they must be doing something wrong because they're not. But now I've realized like almost everybody, like, I'm friends or have some type of relationship with most of the collections in this ecosystem, with somebody on the team, if not like the main founders. Most of us have taken some type of L at this point.
Oh yeah.
Now we took a pretty big one. We might have taken one that's like, we might have been on like the bigger size L than like some of my peers. But this funny thing has happened recently that it's almost like I was like making a joke with somebody on Twitter. I was like, we might need to like start a support group, because it's like the people that like thought that they were too good before, then they take their L, and then we start seeing each other. We start supporting each other more. And I'll say that was the humbling thing for me. That made me have like so much more respect for other founders, and start wanting to support them, to be honest, to be like, yo, man, this shit is hard when it's hard. You know, it's really gratifying and fun when it's fun. But when this shit is hard, it's fucking hard. And anybody that's in here that's doing this, you're going to get my support and respect. Even if we are competing for liquidity in a small swimming pool, yo.
Yeah. No, that's facts. So, yeah. All right. So I've got one last question for you, and then we're going to get into kind of the next chapter, what's coming next. And correct me if I'm wrong here. You can't really talk a ton about Bubble Goose, right? Like you guys, there's some stuff going on there.
Yeah, so I mean, I could feel free to ask any questions. I mean, like I
guess I would say this. Give an update on like if you're holding a Bubble Goose and you're watching this right now. Give an update, and then also, because I know there's like it's a little bit complicated. When you have the ability to speak on it fully, why don't we let's run back another episode at that time, and we'll talk more about it. But for somebody who's holding a Bubble Goose right now, if they're watching this, they're expecting some alpha on Bubble Goose and things like that. Can you give an update on that? And I guess like what you can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, kind of like I got into previously, I mean, I think a big thing that we learned is running one NFT community is really hard. Running two is like not something that I suggest. And I think we learned that. We learned that it's really important that these are separate teams with separate leadership. So yeah, without getting kind of like into the details and being like super respectful of the relationship with Carl and the Bubble Goose team, we had some differences. And we kind of came to this decision collectively that it made sense for Bubble Goose to be managed on its own. A couple like really awesome star teammates from the WAGMI team ended up going over there and joining Carl's team and are running the project. I'm really excited about Carl and his team and what he's doing. I like, my partner Ben from the music side of things has a long relationship with Carl. They did a television show together, the show Sugar and Toys, with one of our clients, which was a really awesome show. So outside of the NFT space, there was a relationship, and there was like and there was trust. And I really have a lot of belief in him as a creator. I think that we're all learning how to navigate in this NFT space. Some of us get it more than others. Some of us take longer than others. But what I will say is that he's a genuine creator. He's got a resume of like a lot of really, really great stuff that he's done. And he really believes in this and is on a mission to make it succeed. So what I'll say is that like, we're like not operationally involved on the day-to-day any longer. We're still kind of like, there's some things that I can't talk about right now because we're still kind of figuring out the details of our relationship, but I have nothing but love for them. I support them. I'm bullish on them, and what I'm focusing on is moving forward with WAGMI Beach and the whale community, and I'm on the sidelines cheering for Bubble Goose, and I want them to win, and I have a lot of confidence in the people on their team. I can't say what will or won't happen, especially on a project that I'm not managing on the day-to-day. But what I will say is there's a lot of positive intention on that team from a lot of really smart people.
Yeah. So no, that makes perfect sense. And when you can dive into it further, we'll do another episode. We'll chat about that. And I respect how transparent you've been on all of this. I want to give you one last opportunity before we get into the good stuff. And we probably will have to break this into 2 episodes because we're already what are we, an hour plus, hour 26 into this. Yeah, see, quick, it goes by quick. But I want to give you one last opportunity to kind of talk to everybody real quick and just as a hey, if you've been sticking with us in the last year, or hey, if you've lost faith in us in the last year, just give you a minute to address those people and kind of tell them, I guess, your thoughts on the last year or so and what they, just your overall thoughts on all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be able to to get into that. And honestly, it feels good to be able to talk through all this stuff, So I think that what I would say is when we created WAGMI Beach and we created the Catalina Whales, we created it because we felt that we were capable of creating something special. We had a North Star, and we thought, we have the capability of doing something that's meaningful here, right? And really what that kind of vision started with was, let's create this brand. Let's build a community that's that this speaks to, right? And let's work collaboratively with that community to see how far we could take this thing. Can you figure out a new way to create a global entertainment brand, right? And I thought that was a really exciting proposition to us, and it's still a really exciting proposition to us. And I think that we got excited and we jumped the gun on the timelines and the expectations, and I take responsibility for that, because I don't ever want to tell somebody something and for it not to be accurate. But I will say that the intention and the mission remains the same, and I think that if anything, going through this period, it's allowed me to have a lot more perspective. It's allowed me to have a lot more humility, and I feel really appreciative of the community that we've built and the people that have stayed here with us. So what I'd say is, to the people that are here with us now and that have stuck with us through this period, I appreciate you guys, and I'm thankful for you guys, for your trust and support. I know it's been hard. I know that it's that when you're not the hottest project, that it's less fun to represent it. I think that you have to kind of be out there and be the first line of defense, out there in the ecosystem. And I appreciate the people that have believed in the vision and believed in us long enough. And what I'm hoping for is that we're getting ready to embark on what's on bringing the fun back, on bringing the energy back, and reestablishing our place as a dominant player. And I feel really confident that we're about to. And then what I would say to the people that have either watched from the sidelines or believed in us and lost faith, I just want to say that I accept responsibility. I think the beautiful thing about NFTs and Web3 is it's a choice. You could choose if you want to be in. You might believe now, you might not believe later. I look forward to the opportunity to rebuild the trust. And I also want to just acknowledge that I understand why some of you are pissed, right? I understand why some of you question some of the decisions. I wish I had made the right decisions. I think one thing that I didn't really get into too much, but that I think it's important to say right now is I think we've learned a lot about two-way value between the community and a project and founders. And I think that probably that was the biggest thing with Bubble Goose, right? Is that people felt hey, I believed in you, and I held in this long time. I put extra liquidity into this new thing, and I didn't get the results that I wanted. So I want to say that I understand how that feels to believe in something and put your all into it and kind of and make an investment in a community, and for it not to work out how you want it to. So I want the people who believed in us and now had to go through this period of feeling a little bit down or feeling a little bit let down. I want them to know that I am empathetic to that. I actually do I do really understand what it means to believe in something and believe in someone and then be let down. And so for one, I want to say that I'm empathetic. I don't expect that everybody's going to come back. But I'm excited at the opportunity to win back the love and affection of the people that we lost. Because I will say that my true belief in the bottom of my heart is that everything good and all the energy that existed before some of these mistakes that led to this, that we're going to bring that back times 10, and we're going to dominate. And I look forward to the opportunity to to win back the love and to win back the trust of the people that left. And if they don't, it's okay. There's no hard feelings. But I'm excited about the opportunity.
I respect that. I respect that. I think that's a great point to lead this episode off on. So this is part 1. We will be running back a part 2. We'll take a 5-minute break here, take a piss, stretch the legs a little bit, and then we'll run back part 2. So thank you guys for listening, and press play on part 2.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Pow pow, baby.
See you guys.